Hi, I'm Angela Martin and welcome to another episode of Digicast. Now in this episode we'll be looking at how we can play as well as add in various effects within our slideshow with the use of transitions and builds. Also we'll be looking at how we can record our slideshow and use our iPad or our iPhone as a Keynote remote with the use of the Keynote app. Then lastly looking at how we can export as well as the export options within Keynote. Now returning back to my Digicast presentation, now when I check out my presentation I can see that I have all my media files as well as objects in place, and now I can go ahead and play my presentation by clicking on the play button. Now going through my presentation by clicking on my arrows on my keyboard, I'll notice that my presentation plays okay, but it just jumps from one slide to the next, which kind of makes it laborious and can add very little effect to what I'm trying to bring across to my audience. Now, if I want to add a little bit more character and add a bit more effect to my presentation, I can do this with the use of transitions and builds. Now, transitions is the animation that's going to be used to go from one slide to the next, whereas my builds will be the animation being used with the objects within the slides. Now if I should select my first slide, my heading slide, and I want to add an effect, I can go to my animation inspector by clicking on my animation inspector button, and I can click on add an effect, and I can see it comes up with various different effects that I can add into my slide. And I'll start by adding in the first one, which is called my magic move. So if I click on magic move, they come up with another window saying that two slides must have at least one object that is common, which is okay in my first slide to my second slide, as I can see that the main title is also the heading on my second slide. So I can let this message come up every time, but for now I'll just click on don't show this again, and I can now continue on. Now as I can see that it shows me a preview after I've added in that transition, and when adding in a transition it also adds in a little symbol, the blue triangle, to my slide, which indicates that a transition has been added. So coming back to my animate inspector, I can click on preview again to see what it will do to the next slide. So it will just shift up and bring in my text, which will then take me to my next slide. So in my next slide, if I should decide to add in the magic move again by clicking on add an effect and click on magic move again, I will see that this time around the effect isn't as good as the first one, as our objects being used in the third slide isn't the same as the objects being used in the second slide. So this time around what I'll do is, just to make it a bit more effective, I'll change my magic move transition not by object and not by word, but instead by character. So if I click it by character, the effect will be way more different. If I click on preview just to show what it will look like, it will now take the characters of the one slide and it will do a transition over to the other slide. And so I can go on and do the same effect, magic move, and I can do it by character just for the first three slides, as they are the information of the company. So I'll add in the magic move by character, and that completes my first three slides as indicated. Now moving on to the next one, I can now add in a different transition. Click on add effect, and this time around I'll just make this one switch, and so I'll keep that transition. And now in my next one I will add in the same one, switch. It's very important not to make it too fancy, so I'll keep on one transition per heading. So then I'll keep on my departments. I can see there are more slides within my departments, so I'll click to bring down those other slides, and I can now put a switch on to all of those slides. So after I've now added in my transitions into those slides within that department, I can now go further and add in my bolds. Now, as mentioned before, my bolds are the animation being used by the objects within a slide. And you can see I've got my various objects of my executive staff members. So if I want to add in a bold, I first click on the object, and I'll see that my animate inspector have now changed away from the transition to bold action and bold out, which means that we are now working within our objects. So first of all, I will click on add effect, and I'll click on the effect, let me say dissolve. And I can see that all my names come in one go. However, if I decide to add in each and every bullet point, I can go to my delivery and I can change all at once and change it by bullet. So now if I should do a preview, I'll see that they will come in one bullet at a time. Now I can also do the same with my object. So if I click on the one image, I can click on the effect, and I also want to bring this in with a dissolve, and the same I can do to the next one, and so I can go on to do them all. However, this time around, if I should do the preview again and I click on preview, I will notice that the names will come in first and then the images all at once. So if I want to change the order in terms of how it will come in, say for instance I want to bring in my first bullet with the image, second bullet with the image, I can go to bold order. And when clicking on bold order, it will show me how the text will come in and thereafter the images. So if I should take Robin Olivier, the text, and I take the image, I can now drag that below the Robin Olivier name, and I can do the same to Keynote's image, drag it below her name. And so I can do the same with Mark, and then lastly Alan will fall into place. So now if I should close this down and I click on play, and I'll see that the name will come up and the image with the Keynote, with Mark, as well as with Alan. So that is how I can change my bold as well as change my bold effect. So now that I've got my presentation in a better layout, and if I now start playing it, I'll see that it becomes way more effective. So that is how we can add in our different bolds as well as our transitions, as well as change the settings within our bolds and our transitions. So when it comes to recording our slideshow, we can go to the document inspector. And within our document inspector in the audio tab, we can click on the record button. So when clicking on the record button, it will take us to a presenter display type, which shows us our current slide, as well as our next slide, as well as additional objects such as our timer. And if we want to add in other objects as well, we can click on the button in the top right hand corner next to our close button, which will give us the ability to also add in our presenter notes. Now when doing this, gives us the option to record our voices as well, or do a voiceover within our presentation. Also, we can use the recording option to tie up music to our slideshow, especially useful for when we want to create a slideshow to celebrate somebody's life. And this will match up the music to the slideshow due to the recording that we make. And so to demonstrate this, we can click on the record button, and as soon as my timer runs out, it will start recording. So this is a presentation of Digicast, and before we get started, just a quick explanation in where Digicast comes from and what we do, and also what we are qualified to do, and how we have grown to different departments, as well as introducing our executive staff members who makes the magic all happen. So I'll stop it there. So now if I finish with my recording, I can see that I have my little recording at the bottom, and I've got a play here to take me back and forth on my movie. So if I'm done with my recording, I can just click on the close button within my presenter display, and I see there's my recording. I'll keep it there. I can clear it as well, which will delete the recording. So now that we know how to put in our transitions, our builds, and do our recording, we can also use our iPhone as well as our iPad as a Keynote remote. And this works specifically if we've got the Keynote app loaded onto our phone or our iPad. So to do this, I will open my QuickTime player first to show what happens on my iPad side. There's my iPad. So if I want to connect my iPad as a Keynote remote, I will go to the Keynote app. And when I'm in the app, in the top left-hand corner next to my ad, the iPad or iPhone with a play button, and I can click on continue in that window, which will then look for the device that I want to connect to. And here within my Keynote, I can click on the Keynote in the top left hand corner, preferences. I can go to remote, and I'll see there's my iPad that came up, and I click on link, and I'll see there's a number that comes up. That same number have now popped up on my iPad, and I can just click on confirm. So now my iPad is linked, and I can now click on play on my iPad, and now I can see that slide which I now control from my iPad. And this gives me full control with going through a presentation while not being bound to my machine to see which slide is coming up next. So those are the play options as well as the settings for my slideshow. And now if I want to export my slideshow, I can do it by going to my file and export. Now there's the different options in terms of exporting my presentation. If I export it as a PDF, it will convert all of my slides to PDF format. If I click on PDF, it will give me my PDF option. It will also give me the option to add in my presenter notes if I've added presenter notes to each of my slides. And if I should go on to exporting it as a PowerPoint presentation, which I can also set as an older PowerPoint file, if I click on advanced options and change to a PPT, I can export it as a PowerPoint file. A couple of things that we got to know about exporting it as a PowerPoint file. Some of the transitions will not be available within your PowerPoint application. So those slides will be changed to default transition. Some of the fonts that you use in your Keynote might not be available within PowerPoint, which will also change to a default font. So those are the things that you need to be aware of when changing over to a PowerPoint file. A QuickTime can change it into a QuickTime movie or into a movie, and there are two options we have when changing to a QuickTime movie. We can have it self-playing, and when we select self-playing, we can then choose a timer to go from one slide to the next, as well as builds, which is our animation within the slides. Also, we can set in the resolution for our slideshow, whether we want to, or we've done it in high definition or 720p. We can also switch it there. However, in our case, we also have set a slideshow recording. Now, if we select the slideshow recording, it will then follow through that recording. There's also the HTML option. Then you can export it as an HTML document, which you can then put onto a website and so on, onto a website which can be then viewed through the different browsers. We can also set it as exporting the slides as images, or if you're exporting it to a older version or older Mac that only has Keynote 09 on it, you can export it into that format as well. Both Keynote and PowerPoint, as well as our PDF, we can set up a password for making it a more encrypted access. So those are the options in terms of exporting our presentation into a different file format. So hope that you enjoyed this episode of Digicast, and this concludes our Keynote training. All of the best with your presentations. With me, Angelo Martin. Hope you have a fantastic day as always, and goodbye.